Candace Owens, DJ Akademiks, face to face. How did it go down? It might not have gone down exactly as you might expect it. But make sure you stay tuned to the end to find out where this conversation is heading and what are the consequences that are coming from this conversation. Welcome to Escaping the Echo Chamber. Even though it was on Candace Owens' Daily Wire set, it was his podcast, which is interesting. And I think that's something that you have to keep in mind. She may say, oh, it's because I'm very pregnant, and she is very pregnant. I think she's expecting a child within the month, her second child within the month. That could be the reason. Alternatively, there is the possibility that she wanted to make sure it was in her studio so that she could film and record at the same time as he is for whatever reason, so that if things went a certain way, she could put out her own version of the events. And I think that's a point not to forget. And this is the point I want to challenge anybody who likes Candace Owens, who's a supporter of Candace Owens, or who thinks she's great. Who has she gone up against with a competing ideology? What debate has she gone head to head with and come across letting you believe she's the more knowledgeable person, the more intelligent person, or the person with a better position? What debate have you seen her prevail in? That's what I say. And I say this for a reason, because yelling into an echo chamber, you can sound like the smartest person in the world. As long as there's nobody challenging, you can say anything you want to. I can tell you that Batman is stronger than Superman. And then I can spend an hour breaking it down how Batman is stronger than Superman. However, if there's nobody challenging me, if there's nobody to let you know that no, Batman has no superpowers, Superman has superpowers, Batman doesn't have super strength, Superman does. If you never hear somebody who gets to challenge me or to challenge my ideas, I could just be spending an hour just making stuff up. So my question to you is this: who has Candace gone up against and prevailed against on the merit of her ideas? Let's start with DJ Akademiks. DJ Akademiks is from Jamaica. He grew up in Jamaica, and he said he had a culture shock when he came to the States. I covered a video with him talking with Fresh and Fit, and Fresh and Fit saying some not so complimentary things about Black Americans. And he was co-signing several of those things. At one point in this conversation, he kind of co-signed some of those aspects again. But he does pull back. He does display a greater sense of self-awareness and a greater sense of introspection. Because one of the things he notices, one of the things he acknowledges in this interview is he says, I had made these statements before, and then I stopped and thought about it and said, wait a minute, maybe I'm not being respectful, and I'm being ungrateful for the sacrifices that Black Americans made so that Black immigrants like me could experience the lifestyle that we're experiencing right now. And I appreciate that. And I think that no matter what anybody has to say about the rest of the interview or about academics in general, that right there shows the potential for a conversation, for an exchange of ideas, for people to stop, take a deep breath, and realize that we can start to look at and try to understand where each other are coming from across the diaspora. Despite the fact that he showed such introspection is not part of Candace Owens' shtick. Candace Owens' shtick is to recite tired, stale-ass, incorrect talking points and to constantly, unrelentingly malign the Black community. So, of course, when he says, oh, and I thought I had to look, she says, oh, no, but because Nigerians and Caribbeans are the most successful in this country, and Black men blame everything on slavery. Slavery was over such a long time ago. Aside from showing her utter lack of history, because remember, this is the same woman that said she learned Black history from Charlie Kirk. I'm going to say it again. This is the same woman that said she learned Black history from Charlie Kirk. But let's keep going. A lot of people don't realize how important history is. If you're going to say, make a critique about the way somebody is acting, the way an individual is acting right now. Let's say they're yelling at somebody, they're going off on somebody, they're calling somebody all kinds of names, they're up in the other person's face. If you're going to come up to them and say, hey, what's wrong with you? You're belligerent, you're angry, you're confrontational, like you're a problem. That's a statement you may not be able to fairly make if you don't know the context. If you don't know that right before you walked up, the other person was playing with a loaded firearm and almost killed them with it. If you realize that this is why the person is angry, this is why the person is going off, this is why the person is up in the other person's face because they almost negligently just killed them, then you'd realize, oh, wow, that context definitely affects the way I view this individual now. Now, let's take that to a macro level. If you take a look at the state of the Black community, Black Americans right now in the United States, and you ignore the context, you come up with stupid stuff like Candace does. If you ignore the context, you might actually think that the things that Candace Owens is saying make sense. But you'll say, no, but I know about slavery, but slavery was, over 100 years ago. Yes, but do you know what came after slavery? If you cannot begin describing myriads of systems that were specifically designed and created to hinder Black people's progress and to roll back Black people's progress, then you do not know what you're talking about. And listen, none of us are born knowing everything. This may be the time to stop, listen, and find out. Candace Owens is not the person to find out because Candace Owens doesn't know history. So when DJ Akademiks makes that statement, I appreciate that he is willing to stop and listen and say, wait a minute, there's a lot I'm not aware about the Black experience in the United States. I mean, I wasn't there and I wasn't familiar with everything that was going on in the 60s and 70s, in the 60s, particularly with the civil rights movement. But remember, the civil rights movement is happening 100 years after slavery ended. Why was that? What was going on? What continued to happen? And then what happened after that? You see, if you have no context, if you don't know history, or if you choose to be intellectually dishonest and ignore the history, ignore what has led up to this moment, then yes, you may think that the things that Candace Owens are saying are insightful and inspiring. They're not. They talk about BLM. Well, she brings up BLM repeatedly. Like she looks for ways to bring up and reasons and excuses to bring up BLM. It's almost as if she's trying to use this to once again to pander to her base. Because all of the claims of being an independent thinker aside, independent thought is not at all in Candace Owens' wheelhouse. But she talks about how she grew up and she liked to read books, and black Americans were like, oh, what's wrong with you? She's trying to act white. And she's like, see, that's what's wrong with the Black community. Reading and intelligence is considered acting white. She tells a story about being asked if what she would say if somebody said holla. She admits that she had no idea what holla meant. She said she would say hello. And she said, hey, I hung out with white kids. And so I want to point out something that Candace Owens is lying about. She's lying about it. Not even getting wrong. She's just lying about it. People weren't criticizing her for her intelligence. They weren't saying she's trying to be white because of her intelligence. Her complete removal and separation from the culture is what made them say that she was trying to act white, trying to be white. That's what it was. The fact that you don't even know what they're talking about, you said, oh, I didn't listen to music. Okay, in other words, you didn't listen to Black music. That's what you're saying. You didn't listen to Black music. And so when people were criticizing you, it wasn't about you reading books. It was about you being completely and totally separated from Black people and from Black culture, despite the fact that there were Black people there. There were Black people in the vicinity, but you chose to surround yourself with white people. You may say, how do I know this? Because if you look further into her life, which they didn't get into in this interview, but you look at who you were hanging out with in high school, because that was in middle school, she says. In high school, you were hanging out with a bunch of white racists that wound up threatening you, calling you, making threats against you and your family so badly that you had to file a suit against the school district. You got tens of thousands of dollars in a settlement from the school district because of the white racists that you hung out with that began terrorizing you. This is who Candace Owens is. But people will say, oh, she speaks truth. No, she speaks lies. And that's why I ask the question about whom has Candace Owens debated. Because Candace Owens does this trick a lot. She creates a straw man. What a straw man is a flimsy mischaracterization of somebody else's position. And then she argues against that. That's why Candace Owens loves being in an echo chamber, because it makes her seem intelligent. Because when she gets to create and completely mischaracterize what somebody else is saying, and then she can argue against it, how can she not win? Surprisingly enough, despite her doing this tactic, she sometimes doesn't win. But in this case, you're looking at her behavior and we're realizing that, wait a minute, your behavior isn't just embracing reading. And number one, the books you're reading, by the way, Harry Potter, I'm not sure if reading Harry Potter is the sign of ultimate intelligence. But the fact that she thinks it is, okay, go on with your bad self. What I must point out is you have completely alienated groups of people, and your behavior is what people are criticizing. Your behavior in alienating the black students in the school is what they're criticizing. But it's interesting that you can sit here in your grown woman self and be completely oblivious of things you as your teenage self may have been doing that was creating a rift between you and other black students. But you know why you can't do that? Because you're still doing it. You still have that rift between you and other black people. You think you're better than them. Not because you're more intelligent. You're not. Not because you're more devoted to learning. You're not. You're actually anti-intellectual. And Joe Rogan called you on it. Joe Rogan called you on being an anti-intellectual partisan hack. She continues to talk about welfare and how welfare harms the black community. At no point does she talk about, wait a minute, if welfare harms the black community, because I bring it up every time you've got one of her acolytes trying to push her talking points. If you notice, Candace Owens doesn't go into hostile territory. Candace Owens preaches to the choir. So Candace Owens will go on Tucker Carlson and say the stupidest stuff imaginable where there's no pushback. And where Tucker Carlson can sit there with a stupid look on his face and they go, yes, I'm glad somebody gets it. And allow you to say the most disrespectful things about black people so that he can then say, well, I didn't say it. The black woman said it, because he's that type of clown. But let's move on, because she talks about how welfare hurts black communities, but doesn't talk about, hey, wait a minute, white people get the majority of welfare. Is welfare hurting white communities? She talks about abortion and how that is bad for black communities. Okay, black people are harmed by welfare. That must mean white people are harmed by welfare. So are you telling your majority white audience that they shouldn't be accepting welfare? That they shouldn't be allowing white families to use welfare? Are you telling your white audience that? Candace Owens will never tell her vastly majority white audience that they should not be on welfare, that they should not be on Medicare or Medicaid, that they should be against Social Security. Because in fact, Trump, her prophet, literally got up on stage and told a group of America Firsters that America will never be a socialist nation. He then goes on to say, but I'm not going to touch your Medicare or your Social Security. I'm not going to touch your Medicare or your Social Security. Sounds to me like somebody doesn't quite understand socialism. She talks about CRT and how that's bad. And I'm like, wait a minute, because now here's the thing I've noticed. Because on this channel, I've talked about Brexit, and Brexit, one of its things it talks about is stopping CRT. How is CRT a threat to black kids? She says, oh no, they should be teaching science and math. Okay, wait a minute. The curriculum, if you're going to criticize the curriculum, CRT isn't the only part of any alleged curriculum, and it's not even a significant part of any curriculum. In fact, it's not a part of curriculum. CRT are graduate level courses. But you want to criticize curriculum, and you're ignoring the fact that a bunch of these classes that are offered in these schools have no bearing on getting a job or actually being successful. They're just busy work. But she doesn't go into saying that. She just talks about CRT. Why? Because she doesn't have a black agenda. She acts like she's talking to the black community. No, she's talking about the black community. She talks to white audiences about the black community and uses them to fundraise. She criticizes, maligns, demonizes, and denigrates black communities in order to get white people to donate bunches of money to her. And she then claims, I don't get Trump campaign money, I don't get RNC money, but you get a bunch of Republican money. You get a bunch of money from Republican voters and from other Republican organizations. Because let's not forget that TPUSA, where you first started working, was a Republican-funded organization. So stop the nonsense. Like, stop it. Brexit. You have these Republican heavy hitters behind the scenes involved in the books. Like we've done a breakdown on Brexit. Addition, you work for the Daily Wire. So she sits there and says, oh, who am I a puppet of? You're a puppet of Republican operatives. That's who you're a puppet for. Yeah, Fox News, the RNC, and Donald Trump's campaign are not the only Republican organizations out there. Stop the nonsense. But she lies, creates these straw mans, and then challenges the straw mans. Like, see, I'm not that. And at no time did she say, wait a minute, what solutions are you offering? because CRT isn't even a problem for Black communities. It's not. Welfare. She claims that welfare hurts Black communities, but at the same time, she's claiming that abortion needs to be done away with. And she says, oh, because they say that these poor mothers, these girls, they're being pressured, because Akademiks actually pushed back. And he says, hey, it's choice. It's a choice that an individual mother is taking, or individual potential mother is taking, whether or not she wants an abortion. She says, oh, no, they don't really have a choice. This is literally what this moron said. Literally what this idiot said. They don't have a choice. They don't have a choice. So I'm going to advocate laws that make sure they don't have a choice. This is the brilliance of Candace Owens. You can't make this. You literally cannot make this stuff up. But Candace can. The fact that she just says stuff that has no backing whatsoever. There's nothing to back up what she's saying. And in fact, it's completely diametrically, logically opposed to what she's saying. Going off about how they lack choice in choosing to get abortions. And her solution is to literally remove choice so that they can't get abortions. And you support small government? What? You want the same woman that claims that, she's anti-jab mandate? Allegedly, that's what she said. We have no evidence to prove that she did in fact take the jab. She makes some claims about, she had a bad reaction to a previous jab. No evidence to support that. We have no idea that she's not just making that up. And so she can invent a story about herself that because we don't know you, so we can't directly challenge that. But if we actually start talking with data and statistics that are much more general and that can be verified or challenged, that's a completely different conversation. But in supporting these new laws that have been triggered by the Dobbs case, she completely ignores the fact that under the Supreme Court's Dobbs decision, 14th Amendment liberty component, guess what else isn't included in the liberty of the 14th Amendment? But then she says that because that parents and people will tell them, the baby's father that to get an abortion, and she's like, they're pressured, and that's why they're making this choice. It's not really their own choice. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. If these young ladies don't have the means to provide for these babies, how exactly are they going to provide for these babies once they give birth to them? On one hand, you're arguing to get rid of welfare and simultaneously arguing for abortion to be outlawed. How are poor women giving birth to these kids going to provide for these kids? It sounds like this idiot hasn't thought this through. Akademiks pushed back. He pushed back on a couple of issues. Kept it respectful. That was what was interesting. He has some ideas, he has some opinions, but he would try to broach them in a non-confrontational manner. So he pushed back. He's like, I told you with the abortion already, but he also pushed back in terms of welfare taking fathers out of homes. He said, but hey, wait a minute. What about the prison industrial complex? Isn't that taking fathers out of homes? When faced with facts, Candace Owens lies, obfuscates, or just pretends they don't exist. Like Candace Owens used what I will call the Jesse Lee Peterson technique of just hearing facts that have completely dismantled your argument and immediately pivoting to the next subject. Just pivoting away, acting as if the person that just said something didn't say anything. So he says, oh, no, welfare was the problem. Welfare took the parents out the homes, and that's what got the ball rolling. And she just ignores facts. She ignores facts and evidence. That's it. Now, the funny thing is, Blexit, her alleged organization, her website provides no solutions, no suggestions, no type of policy that would be included in reforming the criminal justice system. And when confronted with the injustice of the criminal justice system, she just sidesteps it, ignores it. No facts, no evidence, just, oh, no, it's welfare. Just a conclusory statement without providing any evidence is not a sign of intelligence. It's not a sign of knowledge. It's not a sign of wisdom. It's a sign, and that's what is amazing. If you look at that Joe Rogan interview, where she's just making these definitive statements based upon nothing at all, and he calls her on it. But so many people will just, like Akademiks is trying to keep this non-confrontational. He's trying to keep this friendly, non-combative. So his pushback, he knows that once she starts getting to a certain level, he just, I'm just going to retreat. I'll ask the question. I'll press a little bit. But if she's indignant and insists on pushing forward the point, I'm going to let it go and move on to the next point because I'm trying to keep this interview smooth and friendly. But this is why she doesn't do interviews against others that will push back. This is why, because she has no solutions for criminal justice, and she wants to ignore the fact that the back the blue policy that she's on, the back the blue nonsense she's on, is what has led to fathers being snatched out of the homes. The war on drugs, the war on crime, like all of these policies, because like she'll be against bail reform and all this kind of stuff, and that's snatching fathers out of the homes. But she doesn't want to pay attention to facts. But Akademiks hit her with some facts, and she wants to completely ignore what the war on drugs did to the black family. The war on drugs destroyed the black family. And there's so many people that are oblivious to that. So there's so many people that will talk about the black family and will say, oh, the black family needs to be saved, and then ignore the effect that the war on drugs. And then they'll say stupid stuff, oh, well, you shouldn't be selling drugs. That level of bootlicking just doesn't fly with me. And let's take it to this place. The fact that, well, at a federal level, the federal government has no authority to wage a war on drugs. And at the state levels, once again, constitutionally, I am fundamentally opposed to the war on drugs. Because at the constitutional level, what authority does the government have to tell us what we can and cannot put into our bodies? And then if you look at the facts, if you look at the historical context of why the war on drugs was ramped up, oh, really? And you can't sit here and criticize Joe Biden's policies and say, oh, what Joe Biden did to the black community is horrible, and then support the war on drugs. Joe Biden was one of the chief architects, one of the chief generals in the war on drugs. So miss me with the bullshit. Claims to be an advocate for criminal justice reform. No substance, never heard any examples of how they intend to push for criminal justice reform, what kind of criminal justice reform they want. It's just there. It's just something they put there just to pretend that they actually have something that is aligned with black people. But CRT, they actually have pamphlets preaching against CRT. Why? Because it's not a black focused organization. They want a black fronting face, but it's just a Republican agenda. It has really no relation to black people. That's what Candace Owens is. Just like Candace Owens, just like her organization Blexit, Candace Owens has no relation to black people. She really wants no relation to black people. And it's funny because Academic even asked her about that, about why she doesn't go in front of, do things like the Revolt Conference. And she says, oh, well, they don't want to invite me on. And I even try to reach out to Charlemagne and I try to get on and he doesn't want to have me there. And I'm like, why Charlemagne? You spent a long time criticizing Cardi B, talking about she's out of her depth, talking about politics. And it's like, wait a minute. Well, Charlemagne is also just, he runs a music show. Like his show is about music and entertainment. Why would you, a political commentator, be trying to go to speak to Charlemagne? Why wouldn't you be speaking to, well, BNC is no longer around, but why didn't you go on with Mark Lamont Hill? Why aren't you going on with Roland Martin? Because Roland Martin definitely wants to talk to you. Why aren't you talking to Sonny Johnson? Because really, like black conservative woman who has her own Sirius XM show, why aren't you talking? Because there's other people you can talk to. There are people that are actually black political thought leaders, black political activists, black political strategists that are out there that you could talk to. But she says she's trying to talk to Charlemagne. Really? Why Charlemagne? Why are you ducking actual political strategists? Because the last time you talked to a black political commentator was Michael Eric Dyson, last time I remember. And Michael Eric Dyson dismantled her. Like, it was funny because she goes on MSNBC, and this is, I think, part of the reason why she stopped going on MSNBC and stopped going to unfriendly territory, because she wasn't expecting them to put her up against Michael Eric Dyson. She thought they were going to give her a lightweight, but they brought Michael Eric Dyson. And the look on her face, the look of sheer terror when she realized she was going up against Michael Eric Dyson was hilarious. It was absolutely hilarious. In fact, once she realizes it's Michael Eric Dyson, now she knows why she's there. She knows what the topic is there for her to discuss. She knows this. But once she sees it's Michael Eric Dyson, she starts copying a plea, criticizing MSNBC for pitting a black conservative against a black liberal. That's what she literally makes that claim. Like, why are you doing this? Why are you promoting black on black conflict? Like, this is the level of stupidity that Candace Owens brings to the table. But she got dismantled by Michael Eric Dyson, and that's why now you see her on her show talking, or you'll see her on Tucker Carlson's show, where she makes sure she's in friendly territory because she cannot deal with facts and evidence. Even going on Rogan's show. And like I said, Rogan is a very non-confrontational individual. But even then, he pushed back. when she just started saying stupid stuff, like she says, oh, I make sure I have evidence and stuff, and then she just starts getting into stupid stuff, and he starts dismantling, like, wait, but you have no evidence for that. That's completely false. Because he pushed back, and she just fell apart, looked like the idiot that she is. And this is a point I think needs to be stated again and again. The fact that Candace Owens does not want any pushback, that Candace Owens will not challenge anybody and not engage in a battle of ideas. She will sit there in front of a camera, like just like how she started. She started just talking to a camera and just saying stuff where there could be no pushback. And people were like, oh, we love what she's saying, because she was saying things that white conservatives love to hear. A bunch of white conservatives who have these negative stereotypes of black people, and they just wanted to hear her soothe their ego. She started hanging out with Charlie Kirk and going into rooms full of TPUSA drones and just telling them what they wanted to hear, and they would just cheer. Like, y'all are great. Black people are lazy. Yeah. Hey! Okay, but we talked about the various people that are out there. There's so many black intellectuals, black political pundits that she could go head to head with. But she wants to talk about Charlemagne. She wants to get mad about T.I. And T.I., although he's not the most political, he's a rapper who's becoming more and more active, but he still demolished her. To try to mischaracterize what happened as him ambushing her, or that he didn't make sense, because Akademiks actually makes that, that the only people making sense were her and Killer Mike. Killer Mike had to call her out because she tried to jump on his bandwagon. Because T.I. asked a simple question. She says, oh, she supports Make America Great Again. What's so bad about that? And he says, okay, when? What is this period where America is so great that you're trying to replicate? When was America great that you're trying to replicate? Because he makes the point. It wasn't great for us. It wasn't great for black Americans. It wasn't great for black people in this country. So when was America great that you're trying to replicate? And she starts stalling because she's famous for that. If she doesn't know what she's talking about, she starts going off on tangents. She starts stalling. And this is the key that I think has to be noticed about her. If Candace Owens starts stalling, starts going off on a tangent, starts making stupid, ridiculous statements about something else, don't attack those statements and then forget about the original point. If you're going to attack those statements and say, hey, but, let's focus on the issue. You were asked a specific question. Answer that specific question. Do you have an answer? Or do you not? Do you not know what the hell you're talking about? And are you just freestyling? Are you pulling a Trump? Because Trump is your dude. And that's what Trump does. He does a lot of freestyling. If he doesn't know something, he just starts making stuff up, going off on tangents. He's good at that. Very good at that. She's pretty good at it. She's getting better. But that's what she does. She will start talking about something and just going off on tangent. She did it at the Revolt Summit, where she starts talking about other countries had slaves, which once again doesn't answer the question, what time period was America great? Simple question. Killer Mike provided an answer. Now, whether or not we agree with that answer, that's a different story. We can have a discussion on that. But Killer Mike gave an answer. She says, yes, see? And he goes, oh, Candace, you couldn't answer the question. You could not answer the question. You were asked this question first. I answered the question because you couldn't. You were asked this question and you couldn't answer it. There are so many individuals that want to debate Candace Owens, and she runs from. And it's not just, there are black intellectuals, there are black pundits, black political pundits, and political experts would relish the opportunity to go head to head and toe to toe with Candace Owens. She's not doing it. She wants to talk to Charlemagne. She wants to debate Chris Evans. You may say, wait, is there some pundit named Chris Evans? No, she wants to debate Captain America, Chris Evans. Meanwhile, people like David Pakman, people like Kyle Kalinske want to debate her, and she's running. She's been running ever since. So, I remember she was at a TPUSA event or some event, and somebody asked her when she will debate Kyle Kalinske, because Kyle Kalinske has been trying to see her. And she's like, I don't know who that is. Candace Owens is standing with Charlie Kirk when she pretends not to know who Kyle Kalinske is. Now, Kyle Kalinske is the founder of Justice Democrats. So if all the smoke she has for AOC, AOC was one of Kyle Kalinske's original candidates. It's mine. If you don't know who Kyle Kalinske is, then how do you know politics? How can you be criticizing AOC and the squad, and you don't know one of the founding members of the organization that put them in power? What? But she does know who Kyle Kalinske is, because guess who else knows who Kyle Kalinske is? Charlie Kirk. And Charlie Kirk saved her from that conversation. And also, not too long after that, Charlie Kirk debated Kyle Kulinski at Politicon. But this is who Candace Owens is. And people will praise her and say, oh, she's great. I was on another YouTube channel, and some of the people there were fans of Candace Owens and say, oh, you can't challenge nothing she says. What they didn't realize is everything I had already said had challenged and disproved what Candace Owens had said. So like I made a flip. I was being funny about how Candace Owens wears pantsuits and doesn't work at home and doesn't stay at home to take care of the kids. Now, I'm making that statement because these are criticisms and counters to stuff Candace Owens has said. But you see, this is the point. It's amazing how oblivious people are, because Candace Owens criticized Minnie Mouse. Yes, Minnie Mouse, the cartoon character, for wearing a pantsuit. Candace Owens wears pantsuits almost as much as Hillary Clinton. I don't know what she's talking about. But, so when I'm criticizing Candace Owens wearing a pantsuit, I'm mocking Candace Owens for criticizing Minnie Mouse for wearing a pantsuit. But then the whole thing about her, because she could claim that, oh, traditional females, and what happened to traditionalism? Woman, you are not a traditional female. You have your own job, your own career. No, if you want to be a traditional female, get that mic out of your hand, get a pan in your hand, and get in the kitchen and start cooking. Because that's what you want to be, right? You want to big up traditional females. Then get in the kitchen and start cooking. Quit your job. Like your husband, George Farmer, makes more than enough money to provide for you both. You don't need to be out there with your own talk show, running your mouth. You want to be a traditional woman? Out there running your mouth on your own talk show, that's not traditional womanhood. But facts and evidence, reality, intellectual consistency, honesty, these are concepts that are completely foreign to Candace Owens and her most ardent supporters. That being said, it was an interesting interview, but it leaves us basically at this conclusion that Candace Owens is unlike what Akademiks said. Akademiks praised her, said they call her controversial because she's intellectually superior and spits raw truth. 1, she does not spit truth. 2, she is intellectually dishonest, ideologically inconsistent, and informationally incoherent. Well, they mentioned several people, and T.I., Killer Mike, so she says she likes Killer Mike because Killer Mike has been friendly to her. She rails on T.I. repeatedly, and this isn't the first time she's done it. You can see she still has a bone to pick with T.I. because he just so publicly and blatantly embarrassed her. He exposed her. So she has a very personal, very intense hatred for T.I. because he made her look like a complete fool. And hey, she made herself look like it because she says stuff repeatedly that she has no factual basis for and no support for. And in some cases, she's given no thought to. But T.I., Killer Mike, these aren't the only people. Cardi B, these weren't the only people they discussed. So in fact, in one point, when Akademiks is talking about the, Black Americans, and he's talking about how he started to takes ownership of paying attention to the struggle of Black Americans more acutely and more aware, being more aware of the plight of Black Americans and the way Black Americans are treated in this country. He mentions Tariq Nasheed. Now, she automatically jumps in and says, oh, absolute idiot. And once again, I don't know if that's going to happen. And I'm not sitting here saying that Tariq versus Nasheed versus her will be some great battle of the minds. I don't know if they will do it. I believe she will have a whole bunch of conditions in order to do it. Just like, how she had this interview in her own backyard. I think that's kind of where she would want to be, even if she had a discussion with Tariq Nasheed. What was interesting was that Akademiks had made the statement about Tariq Nasheed and said how, Tariq Nasheed doesn't like him and has criticized him for several things. But that statement caught the attention of Tariq Nasheed. So Tariq Nasheed reached out to Akademiks and said, hey, Akademiks, we need to chop it up. Apparently, it seems like he flew out to New York, or New Jersey, where East Coast, where Akademiks is, and they chopped it up. And in fact, I'm filming this on Monday. It may have already dropped, but the interview between Tariq Nasheed and Akademiks should be dropping either today, if it hasn't already dropped already. So, of course, I'm going to be checking out that interview, and we're going to be breaking that interview down, because I think that's something that really needs to happen. I think there needs to be honest dialogue between especially in view of the diaspora wars that are currently existing. We need to get that under control immediately. And so to see Akademiks being a Black Jamaican and Tariq Nasheed being a Black American sitting together and having a conversation, I think is a potentially good thing. I hope it's a productive conversation. I sincerely hope, but I'm going to be looking at that interview, watching that interview, and I'm going to be breaking it down in terms of what's said, what isn't said, and what we can get out of it, and how it can further improve the conditions of Black people throughout this world. As always, don't forget to hit that thumbs up, like, share, and subscribe if you haven't subscribed already. And if you disagree with me, if you think, no, Candace is great, and this interview really showed how truthful and fiery she is, feel free to give me the thumbs down and tell me in the comment section, if welfare hurts Black people, what does welfare do to white people? I'll see you next time.